Hello everyone, my name is Martin and this is going to be Git Good with Android Studio, where we're going to look at how you can use the version control integrations inside Android Studio to work with Git. I'm not a super professional Git user. I don't do a lot of things with Git on the command line like some people can do. But I have a lot of personal experience of using these tools within the IDE, so hopefully I can show you some things that you can then use in your day-to-day work. I really don't expect you to remember everything that I'm going to show you because it's going to be a lot of different features, but hopefully you learn at least a couple things that you find useful. While I do work at JetBrains, I've prepared this just from my own personal experience, so this is not a super official talk on the IDE by JetBrains, but I hope that they would approve of the things that I will be showing you. So for a very quick table of contents of what we're going to look through, we'll start with how you can view logs in the IDE and how you can look into the history of certain parts of your project. Then we'll take a look at managing branches and move on to actually making some changes, see how we can use change lists to manage those changes in nicer ways. And then finally, hopefully we'll have time for all of this, we'll take a look at rewriting the Git history, so modifying existing commits. Let me start then by looking at logs, and we can do that by hitting Alt-9 or Command-9 if you're on a Mac. And that opens the Git log panel, which has these three main parts here. So there's this branch browser on the left-hand side, there's the list of commits in the middle, and we have the commit details on the right-hand side if I select something in the list here. Let's go from left to right here. So first in the branch browser, you of course see all of your local branches, as well as everything that's available remotely. And if you use prefixes, like this project now in Android is using, you can see there's like feature prefixes within the branch names here. Then you can choose this group by directory option, which turns those prefixes into actual folders so that you can more easily find branches like that. You can also, importantly, close this branch browser if you're not using it so that you have more space for everything else. So in this middle log view, you can see your local branches in green and any remote branches in purple. And you can also see the head, which is the current revision that's checked out in Git, marked by this small yellow label. In here, if we select any of these commits, we get the details of it on the right-hand side. Let me, for example, let me fix the font size real quick. So I'll just go back to my Scratch file and make this a bit smaller so that these things also are smaller. So if we select one of these commits here, we can see the title, the description, and so on. And we can see the list of files that are changed within that commit. Then if we double-click any of these or select it and use Ctrl-D to open a diff, we get this diff view, which shows the actual changes within the file. And an important option that you can use here is the Collapse Unchanged Fragments button that's up there on the very top. So if you choose that, anything that hasn't been changed will just be collapsed like this. So you can see here that between lines 50 and 120, there are no changes within this commit. So that part of the file has just been collapsed. So now if we scroll through the file, it's much easier to see all of the actual changes. What you can also do, and let's go and select some other commit for this, is you can take a look at the commit details here in the corner, and you can check which branches contain a given commit. So that way, if you're looking at a commit in history, you can see that it's in these various feature branches, but you can also see that it has already been merged into the main branch. So this is a great way to check whether a commit that you're looking at has already been merged into important branches, like if you have a development branch or a main branch, or if you create branches for each release, then you can check if a commit has actually been merged into those specific branches already. Okay, then in this Git log, we have a lot of different things that we can filter by. We can filter by branch, user, date, which are fairly obvious. Something that's super useful though is filtering by path. So if I go here, I can use select in tree, and that gives me the ability to browse any of the folders of the project. For example, if I'm looking into the history of the search feature within the app, then I can select just this one folder. And if I do that, I get a filtered view of the Git log here, which only contains commits that do something within the search folder. So if I go through some of these commits, you'll see that all of them are changing files, or should be changing files somewhere within the search feature. For example, right there. So this is really great if you're looking into the history of a specific part of your project, like a module. And it can also be useful if you're working on a multi-platform project, and perhaps you have a monorepo with both iOS and Android in the same repository. Then you could filter this so that you only see commits by default that have changed something in the Android part, and you could hide all of the commits that are only changing things on the iOS part of your app. And you can always clear this to see the full commit list and all of the commits from all of the branches. You can also do something similar by starting in the project view. So let's say that I want to look at this build logic folder, which contains the convention plugins of the project. If I want to look into the history of this, I could just right-click this and use Git and then show history, which would again give me a new Git log panel, and it would filter it to the path that I have selected. So now I'm only looking at commits that are changing something within the convention plugins of the project. We can also browse things not by folder, but by file. So if I open a file, for example, the version catalog inside the project, then I also have the same options available. I can go to Git and show history to view the history for just a single file. But you can also get to this in an easier way by using the action search in the IDE, which is Ctrl-Shift-A or Shift-Command-A if you're using a Mac. And here you can also just type in show history, and that might be quicker than doing all of the clicking around and finding the option within the menu. If you're looking at the history of a single file, you get this special view where you have the list of commits, and then on the right-hand side, as you're selecting commits on the left, you get just the diff within the single file in that commit. So you don't see the all of the changes that are part of these commits, but only the parts that are being changed in the file that you're looking at. And of course, you can always grab one of these commits from the list and use showing git log, which takes you back to the main log view, selects the commit that you were just looking at, and then you can see all of the file changes, you can see the full description, and just in general have the context of all of the other commits that have been made around that time. And if we keep going, we can actually even have a more granular diff view. So we can select something within a file, and then we can use show history for selection. And that gives us yet another special diff view, which now shows commits that have changed the specific line that I've selected. So if I'm looking into just the Kotlin version of the project, I can get the history for that one line. And as I go through, you can see all of the commits that are doing something to that specific line. Okay, let's get back to the Git log and look at a few more things here. So one thing that you might find useful is that these views can, of course, be customized. So if we go into view options, there's a lot of things that you can toggle here. But something that you might find useful is showing the git commit hashes as a column. So if I add that, you can see that all of the commits are now showing the git hashes next to them. And if you're looking at these hashes a lot on like CI builds, or maybe you're showing the hash of the build in the actual app that you're testing, then you might want to enable this to quickly find which commit a certain build belongs to. You can also at any time grab a commit here and copy its revision number, for which the shortcut is just all of the modifiers and C for copy. And if you have a revision number from somewhere, you can always paste that into this search field, which will then find the commit by that revision. And you can also just freely search here. So if I'm looking into commits that have changed something related to room, I can type that in, and this just does a text search on all of the titles and descriptions of the commits. What you can also do in recent versions of the IDE is use the general search feature, which is double shift, just hitting shift twice for search everywhere. And here again, if you paste in something like a Git hash, then it will actually find commits for you in the Git log. And you can also search for other things in Git here. So if I wanted, again, like commits related to room, for example, I could search for room, and there would be some Git commit results within this list, but I'm really searching everywhere with this all tab. So it's easier to go to the Git tab specifically, and then if you search for something there, then you will get Git specific results. So branches that match whatever you've typed in, or commits that match whatever you were searching for. Okay, let me show you one last thing related to logs before we move on. So let's say that I'm looking at these commits, which are part of a new feature branch. And I can see that these commits are changing a GitHub workflow build file in the project. And maybe I want to take a look at what this file looks like on this branch, because I want to grab some of those same changes and use it somewhere else, something like that. So the simplest way to check what this file looks like would be to check this branch out locally. But then if I have any changes on my current branch, I would have to do something with those changes, and I might lose them if I go to another branch. So it's complicated to check out another branch. What I can do instead is I can right-click this new branch, this feature branch, and I can use show repository at revision. So if I do that, I get a new panel here on the left-hand side, which looks a lot like the regular project view. But instead of showing the project as it currently is on my file system, it shows the project at the revision that I selected in the Git log. So now if I go to some of these files, such as this workflow file for GitHub Actions, you can see that it opens the file as it exists on that other branch in that other Git revision. So this way I can browse this file which exists on another branch without actually having to check out that branch. And if I wanted to take some configuration here, I just have it available. I could copy it, put it somewhere else, and so on. And importantly, because this doesn't actually check out the branch, these files are read-only. So if I try to type something in, I can't edit these files. I can only open them for reading. Okay, let's take a look at navigating branches next. So there is a indicator for the current branch on the top left corner here if you're using the new UI in Android Studio. And if you don't have that enabled yet, you can just go to Appearance and Behavior and then enable new UI to get this improved interface. So this branch browser used to be in the bottom right corner. Now it's at the exact opposite on the top left. But it still has the same functionality. So it shows you your current branch. And you can also open a branch browser, which shows all of your local and then all of your remote branches as well. Something nice that you can do here is you can just start typing to find any of the branches. So if I want the remote main branch, for example, I can just type in main, and that immediately filters the list. And there's also an option here to favorite branches. So if you need to reference a branch a lot because you're pulling from it often or something like that, maybe your main or your develop branch, then you can favorite those branches. And that way, when you open the branch panel again, which you can also do by just searching for it, that way when you open the panel again, you will get that branch at the very top of the list. So I favorited origin main here, so that's always going to be the first remote branch now that shows up in the list. Let's then look at some basic Git operations. Something that I know people use a lot is update project, which is Control-T or Command-T on a Mac. So that just gets changes that correspond to your local branch from remote and pulls them into your local branch, basically updating things from remote into local. And this also used to be, I believe, part of the toolbar up here, but it's actually no longer there in the new UI. But if you like using that button and you're not using the shortcut for it, you can actually right-click the toolbar and then add a lot of different actions back to the toolbar. So if you want a button for updating your project, for example, you can just add that button back just like that. And you can also choose Customize Toolbar, which gives you full editing of what's in the top toolbar. So you can see here, you have the things on the left, center, and right-hand side of this toolbar. And all of this is completely editable. So you can remove things that you never use. You can add new things that you find useful. So maybe I want to have a git fetch button on the toolbar. I could just go to add action. I could search for any of the actions in the IDE. Again, this could be anything, show history for selection, for example. I could create a new button for that. So you really have a lot of power here to customize the things that you need on the toolbar, and then also to remove things that are just in the way and that you never use. All right. One more basic Git action that you might find useful, of course, is pulling. While update always updates your branch from the same remote branch, pull allows you to select any of the remote branches and pull changes from that branch into your local branch that you're working on. And the UI dialog for pulling also offers you all of the flags that you could use on the command line. So for example, if you like using FF only, which makes sure that there are no merge commits created as you're pulling changes, then you can add that on the UI like this. And the IDE is also smart enough to only offer you the options that can be used together. So you can see that if I choose FF only, I can no longer choose no FF, because those two flags would not make sense together. While the IDE has a lot of Git functionality built in, you can also grab some additional things as plugins. For example, a popular Git plugin is called Git Toolbox. This is a freemium plugin, but I'm not advertising it. I've never paid for it. I'm using the free version and the free features. I don't know what the paid features are, but some of the free features that you can use after installing this are autofetch, which allows you to run a git fetch command either periodically, so every 15 minutes, for example, or every time that you switch branches. And this can be a good way to make sure that whenever you're looking at the Git log, anything that you're looking at on remote branches is actually up to date. So if you haven't fetched in a while, you might be looking at an out-of-date version of remote branches. But if you have auto-fetch turned on, then you basically always have a pretty good view of the remote contents. Something that people also like using, that I don't personally use, but I wanted to show you, is some of the blame features of the plugin. So for example, you can show inline editor blame using this plugin. And if I go back to the version catalog, you'll be able to see what that looks like. So as I'm skipping around the lines, you can see here that the plugin shows some inline Git information of who was the last person who changed that line, when that happened, and what the commit message was. So that's something that you're also able to do with Toolbox. There's also something similar built into the IDE that I forgot to show you earlier. So you can right-click the gutter here, the area next to the line numbers, and you can annotate with git blame. And that also shows you the latest commits that happened on any given line. You can, of course, click these commits, and that will take you right to the Git log for that specific commit. And this, again, is very customizable. So if you want to show more or less information, or you want to, for example, change how names are displayed, you can always go in there and maybe show full names or something like that. Okay, I think we should be about halfway through the talk, so now it's time to actually start making some changes. For that, I want to switch branches, and we'll go to a branch where I already started working on some things. If I scroll to the top here, you'll see that I have some commits that are fixing various things within the repository. I can also show you here that if I select multiple commits, this div view on the right will actually show all of the changes from all of the commits, which might be useful. So if I want to look at all of the changes in these commits, I can just select them together, and now this view is showing all of the changes in a single place. But now I want to make more changes, so let's do that in the version catalog first. The first thing I want to do is I want to update the Kotlin version of the project, so we'll bump that to 1.9.10. And we also have to update compose accordingly. So I'll go here and update the compose compiler to the version that fits the Kotlin version. Then we'll clean up some things that are not used in this file anymore. So I'll grab this startup version, the Android X startup library version. This is unused in the project, so I'll just remove it. And if I scroll down a bit, we can also find a Firebase dependency here, which is unused, so I will also remove that. Here, as I'm making these changes, you can see, again in the gutter here next to the line icons, that there are these small markers that show you what the changes have been. So this small gray dot shows that a line has been removed, and if I click it, I can view the line that was there. I could revert this change, or I could copy the previous version of the line if I still needed it for something else. And wherever I've changed versions, I get a blue marker, and if I were to add some new lines, that would be shown in green next to the line numbers. Let's go ahead and go to the dispatchers module in the project now. So as you can see, this module is a HILT module, which is providing things like the IO dispatcher and the default dispatcher to the application. So just as an example of making some more changes, let's say that I also want to provide the main dispatcher, just like the others are. And I also have to, other than copy pasting this method, I also have to add a new entry to an enum here, which is used with a Dagger qualifier. So I'll just add main to this enum, and then I can use that to qualify the new dispatcher that I've created. Again, I'm just making changes here for the sake of having some changes that we can work with later. And the last thing I want to do is I want to go into the documentation of the project, and here there are some screenshots that are not used anymore, so I'll just delete all of those files. And with this, we should now be able to go to the commit dialog, which you can open with Alt-0 or Command-0 if you're on a Mac. And this shows all of the files that I've changed. Blue here shows that I've changed these 3 files, and then gray here shows that I have deleted these 3 files. Now this view used to be 2 separate views. So there used to be a local changes tab within the Git panel of Studio, and then a separate commit dialog. But with the new commit panel, we now have both of these things as just a single thing within the IDE, so that's what I'm showing you today. If we want to grab these changes and create a commit, I can just hit Ctrl-K, which obviously stands for commit with a K, and that checks all of these files for me and immediately puts focus into this field, so I could write a commit message and quickly create a commit. I also have a lot of customization options here, so if I didn't want to commit all of these changes at once, I could unselect any of these files individually, or I could go into one of these diffs and I could select individual changes within the files to pick what I want to put into the commit and what I want to leave out of it, perhaps to commit later. Right, and at this point, I think I will just commit all of these changes. So again, Control K puts focus into the commit dialog. Then with Control Enter, I can create a new commit. And of course, I forgot to turn off code analysis, which I don't actually want to run during the demo. So Control K created a commit for us. We could also push all of these changes using Control Shift K or Shift Command K on a Mac, which would create a new branch on remote, but I am not going to do that now. Okay, let's go to the Git log, where of course we can find the commit that I have just created. And this is really not a nice commit, right? So I've made a lot of different unrelated changes, and I didn't write a meaningful commit message. So it would be better to commit these things in separate commits with proper messages. So a way to undo this would be to right-click and use revert commit, which would create a new commit that undoes all of the things that this one is doing. Or I can use undo commit, which is a feature here in the IDE, which simply removes that commit from the branch and puts all of my changes back here into the pending changes. So if I look at the files on the file system, the changes are still there, but they are, again, uncommitted changes. And something that you might want to know is that within this Git panel, there's always a Git console that you can look at. So if you want to know what something like the undo commit button is doing under the hood, you can always look at the Git console, where you can see that that action, for example, was running a git soft reset command in the background. Okay, so now that we've undone these changes, let me group these into nicer batches and nicer commits. And a great way to do that is by using changelists. You're actually using changelists whether you want to use them or not, because this changes category here that all of these things are nested in is actually a change list that is there by default. But you can also create additional ones. So for example, I can create a new change list here and call it add main dispatcher to DI. And I can grab the changes from just these two files that are related to adding the dispatcher and drag them onto this new change list. Or I could take these screenshots that I've removed, I could move them to a new change list. Again, I can type in removed unused screenshots. And if I type in the name of a change list that doesn't exist yet, then it creates a new one for me. I can also open any existing file, such as the version catalog that I was working in. And here you can click on the gutter that shows changes. And again, you have the ability here to move a change to another change list as well. So I could move this to something called update Kotlin to 1.9.10, for example. And if you look very closely, you can see that here, instead of having a full color blue marker, this is now just an outline, which means that this change is no longer part of the active change list, which is the one on the top here, which is also highlighted in bold, but it's actually been moved to another change list. And I've managed to accidentally drag everything to that change list, so let me put that back. And then again, move just this to the update Kotlin one. And something that's related to this is the compiler version change. So I'll take that and put that on the same Kotlin change list. And finally, we have two more changes here, which are about removing some things from the version catalog. So this would be remove unused declarations in version catalog. And if I scroll down, there's just one more of these changes, so I can grab that and again put it into a change list where it belongs. So with all of that work, you can see that I now have 4 different change lists with different files. And in some cases, these can even share files because in the version catalog, we have 4 changes in total, but 2 of those are on this change list and 2 of those are on this other change list. So these change lists make it really easy to manage different things that you're working on at the same time. And then it's also very easy to commit these as single commits. So if I make one of these active, for example, the one that updates the Kotlin version, and I hit Control K, then that will select the currently active change list. It will copy the name of the change list into the commit message automatically, and I can quickly create a commit from that change list. I can also do that. Let's commit this other change list. So I'll just make the screenshot change list active, which, by the way, is done by right-clicking and using this option, or just selecting it and hitting Control Space. So if I make this one active, I can hit Control K, and again, very quickly create a commit out of that change list. And then I can maybe make this one active. And as you can see, every time that I switch away from a change list that's no longer active and is also empty, it also prompts me to clean it up. So if I just hit remove, it removes the screenshot change list that I no longer need. Okay, so with that, we have some changes remaining. So let me show you some other things that you can do if you're using change lists. So a nice feature here is that you can convert a change list into a patch file using this option here. This allows you to select which parts of these files you want to put into the patch, and you can also unselect entire files if you want to. I'll just leave everything selected for now. And you can choose whether you want to save this into an actual file, or you can also copy it to the clipboard if you want to. There's also a shortcut for doing this in a quicker way. You can just copy as patch to clipboard in a single action, which does the same thing that I just went through. So let's look at, let's create a new Scratch file and just paste whatever I've copied so that we can see what was put onto the clipboard. So this patch file here is a standard Git patch format, and it shows all of the changes that I've copied from this change list. So adding a new import in this file, adding this new function in this file, as well as adding this new enum entry. So this is a really easy way to get a bunch of changes that you have on a change list onto your clipboard. And you could, for example, send this to a colleague, and then they could use apply patch from clipboard, which of course grabs this same format and turns it into actual changes in your IDE. So this could be a very, very quick way of sending some changes over to someone else so that they can use it too without having to commit those changes, maybe create a branch first, push the branch, have them pull that branch, have them check out that branch, and so on. You can just grab very small changes quickly and send it in a standard way to someone else. What you can also do with change lists is you can put changes aside for later. So I can grab a change list and use shelf changes, which puts the changes that I've selected onto a shelf that you can see up here. So these changes have now been removed from the file system. So if we go to dispatchers module, for example, you can see that the new function that I was creating for the main dispatcher is no longer here, but the actual change is still saved into the shelf. So at any point, I can grab these changes from the shelf. I can use unshelf, for example, and that would bring it back into the file system and into my active changes. So this is a very quick way of putting things aside for later and then being able to restore those changes into your project. You can also do this very dynamically. So for example, I can grab these changes and I can just drag and drop them back into the commit dialog to put them into my project. And I can even drop them onto a specific change list. So for example, if I wanted to put these changes somewhere else, I could drop it onto that change list as well. This feature of shelving things, of putting changes aside for later, is very similar to stashing things. So there's a Git feature which is called stashing that, of course, the IDE also supports. But stashing doesn't allow you to select which changes you want to stash. It always stashes all of your pending changes in your project. So if you have a lot of changes that are nicely organized into change lists and you create a stash from those, you can see that it just removes the changes from all of your lists. And if you unstash, it will just drop all of the changes into the active change list. And then you would have to organize them again, especially if you have a lot of files. So shelving is a more dynamic and a simpler way of putting changes aside without having to always stash all of your changes at once. One more quick thing that you might want to know is that when you're creating stashes, those when you're shelving things, that actually creates patch files for you inside the idea folder. So if you have things shelved, that's also saved on your file system. It's just in the idea folder under shelf, and it's unsurprisingly saved as standard Git patch files as well. So this is a common format, but it's in a location which is specific to IntelliJ or Android Studio. Okay, so now we have 2 more change lists remaining, so let me commit these as well. Just hit Ctrl K and commit this one, go to the other change list with Ctrl space and commit that one. And if we just go back to that change list, we now have made all of these new commits during the talk. So now we've created these 4 new commits. Even if you don't tend to work on multiple things at once, you might find it useful to create some change lists. For example, I tend to have something that I call temp or something similar. And if I want any changes that I only want to put into my local project, but I never actually want to commit it and push it to any branches, I usually put it into a change list like this. So let's say, for example, that I want to try the new K2 compiler, and that needs a flag like this in Gradle properties, but I only want to compile with this locally, and I never want to put this into a commit. Then I could add this line and just put this change into the temp change list, and then any new changes that I'm making would be part of the default change list, and if I commit something, I would only be committing this first list. But in the file system, I would actually have this additional change as well, so that whenever I compile locally, I would always use the K2 compiler to do that. Okay, very quick note, if you don't like the idea of change lists, you can actually also use the staging area support of Git. So if you enable that, then everything that has to do with change lists just turns into staged and unstaged categories within the IDE. But change lists are probably nicer, but really up to your personal preference. Okay, we are quickly running out of time for the talk, so let me get to the last part, where I want to show you very quickly how you can edit your existing commits. This works best if you're working on a local branch which hasn't been pushed to remote yet. But if you are allowed to force push to the branch that you're working on, then you can also make these edits, and then you'll just need to do a force push to update the remote branch because you are modifying commits that already exist. So for example, let's say that I left out something from this last commit, which was removing things from version catalog. So if we go to the version catalog file, there's actually even more unused things in this project. So let's say that I wanted to remove those couple lines as well, and I wanted to put this into the last commit. This is the easiest edit you can make. So you can just start committing, and instead of creating a new commit, you can use the amend option, which will take the changes and as well as the description of the last commit on your branch. And if I hit amend, it will put any of the new changes I've made into this same existing commit. You might also want to rename commits that you've already created. For example, I have this commit down here, which is upgrading the Kotlin version, but it's also updating the Compose compiler version. So I could come in here, right-click, and use edit commit message, or just F2 to edit an existing message. So this would be, update Kotlin and update Compose compiler in the same commit message like this. And if I do that, you'll see that the IDE is working for a bit, and now the commit message has been updated. What if I want to change something more complicated? For example, within this same commit where I've changed the Kotlin version, I forgot to change the KSP version, which should match whatever the Kotlin version is. For that, we can use the most advanced feature for editing history, which is to do an interactive rebase. So if you select a commit and use interactive rebase, you are essentially replaying all of those commits on the branch from that point. And as you are replaying those commits, you get the ability to make changes to them. For example, I can use this option here to stop and edit the existing commit. And if I now start rebasing, you can see that the Git head kind of goes back in time to this previous commit. And if I now go to the KSP version, I can quickly fix that so that it's matching the Kotlin version. And again, I can commit this change. Let's call this update KSP to 1910 and create a commit. And now if I come down here and continue rebasing, then the IDE will replay all of the previously existing commits. So with this, I have now inserted a new commit into the middle of my Git history. And if I don't like that this is a separate commit, I can just do more interactive rebases, because interactive rebase allows you to do a lot of arbitrary editing. So for example, if I didn't like the ordering of these commits, I could just drag and drop these and choose a different order like that. Or if I don't want this to be two separate commits, I can use either squash or fix up to make just a single commit out of them. So fix up would just push all of the changes from this second commit into the first one without changing any of its description. Or if I use squash instead, then that would merge the descriptions of the commits into a single one. And I could also just edit the description here however I want to. And you can make all of these changes during a single interactive rebase if you want to. So again, I could drag some of these around. I could use F2 again to rewrite the name of an existing commit. If I don't actually want to perform one of these things, I could just drop a commit using that button. So interactive rebase is very powerful and allows you to do a lot of editing of existing history. And if I just hit start rebasing, you'll see that the IDE works for a while. It does some git commands, and now the history has been updated, just like I specified during interactive rebase. Okay, I think we pretty much ran out of time, so let me wrap it up there. For more, you can always go to my website, which has a page for this talk. So it should be within the talks page. And there I have more resources about using Git within Android Studio, both official and third-party things about changelists and the general philosophy and description of how the Git integration works in the IDE. I think that's all. Thank you for attending this talk today, and see you around the conference.